Welcome in to the Hoth Hangout podcast. We're glad to have you joining us today for this one. We've got a fun one. Today we are going to be recapping and covering our rewatch of the fourth season, Star Wars Rebels. Spoiler alert in advance. You have not seen Star Wars Rebels and you'd like to not have it spoiled for you. Probably going to be talking about some details of the show in today's episode. So just a heads up there. Be sure as well, before we get into all of today's discussion, if you are not yet subscribed to the Hoth Hangout podcast on YouTube, definitely check us out there for the video version of the podcast. You can also check out the podcast anywhere you get your pods, including Spotify and Apple. We're also findable on all the socials, including at TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter/X, whatever we're calling that website nowadays, at Hoth Hangout. On each of those, like I said, we got a lot to talk about today. Joey, how are you, dude? What's going on?
I am good, my man. I'm excited to talk Rebels. I didn't realize how much I loved this show until I rewatched it again. So this is going to be a lot of fun. But before all of that, I think we have a little bit more to talk about, don't we?
Yes. So before we get into kind of the news of the past week, I recently made a trip to Disneyland. I had never been before in my entire life. And of course, the thing that I was most excited to go for personally was to visit Galaxy's Edge. And as part of my trip, maybe we'll post a photo on Instagram or something. I've got a couple cool photos in front of the Millennium Falcon. But
Oh,
I
very
I
nice.
did also pick up a lightsaber.
Oh.
In fact, I might have picked up two. And
Oh.
and
Is there
I
two different ones or
no, so that's the catch. Can you guess whose lightsaber I got? I sent you pictures, so you know
if
one of
they're
them for sure.
well, one of them, one of them's got to be Ahsoka,
So I
right?
was going to get Ahsoka's, and they didn't have the white bladed sabers.
Oh,
They
okay.
they only had the ones that were like blue and green. I was like, I don't know if that's like true to
Oh,
the character. So I didn't get Ahsoka's, even though I thought about it.
okay.
And my brother got Dooku's curved hilt one.
I did see the curved one. That is very cool.
I'll show you the hilts, and I'll see if you can guess it based off of that.
Is that's not Obi-Wan's, is it?
It's not Obi-Wan. It's kind of a trick question.
That's not Vader's.
Not Vader's. For those of you only listening to the audio version of the podcast, apologies for the showing of the
Yeah.
saber and
And
everything like that. But
this is basically another trivia one that I just don't know. So you're seeing another failing trivia question here. Oh, and there's the second one there.
so maybe this will give a better hint. Here's the first saber.
Oh, is it Darth Maul's?
It's Darth Maul.
That's awesome.
So I did get the you can actually combine these two hilts and put them together and make a
How
big.
long is it like
So so what they recommend
with
when
the
you get
blades?
the Darth Maul blades is that you go with the short sabers rather than the long ones. Because if you get
Right,
the long
yeah.
ones, the hilt is already like massive.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
anyways, yeah, I got the Darth Maul, but they do come
Nice.
apart and they work separately and individually too. So,
That's awesome.
um,
So,
that,
lightsaber training when?
ooh, yeah, we'll have to do that very soon. By the
Yeah.
way, the Star Wars rides at Disneyland far and away, like
Right.
I'm biased, right? So
Hmm.
I went into Disneyland thinking I'm gonna enjoy all the rides. The Star Wars ones were far and away the best. Even my
Mhm.
family, who are not like these huge Star Wars fans, my mom said the best rides were the Star Wars rides. They're just so state of the art and
So did you
innovative.
go on you went on Rise of the Resistance,
Yep, yep,
you went Smuggler's Run,
yep, dude.
and then
Smuggler's
what was the
Run. The
Smuggler's Run is
moment
so did you
when
have
I
were
pulled
you did you have the entire party? Was it just you guys?
Yeah, and I was one of the
Nice.
pilots, and I was the
Oh,
pilot that
yes.
got to pull the lever to jump to hyperspace. Like,
Nice.
so cool. Like, pulling that down and watching the stars. Oh, man, it was awesome.
Did I ever tell you the story when I went on Smuggler's Run with my daughter?
No, what happened?
So, there's 2 seats and then there's an aisle that separates the 2 of you, right?
Yeah.
So, well, my daughter, she doesn't have, like, great gross motor skills and fine motor skills, So I'm able to put her in there, but she doesn't really know to like pull anything, whatever. And I didn't want to ruin the experience for everyone else. So I'm there doing both of them. So I have one hand on my side, the other hand over there, and because I think one's up and down and the other one's
Yes.
left and right, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So it actually works out better. I went into video game, Joey. Like this is, I got to get this
I did
done, you know.
too.
So I locked in, and I mean, we ended up getting, because you have to pick up, was it the coaxium? Was that what it was that you had
Yeah.
to? So I
Yeah.
think we picked up 3 or something like that. So I think it ended up being a pretty good run from what I remember. It wasn't my fault if we didn't pick up any more. I was just saying, but so I had to man the ship just all by myself, practically pulling out my shoulder across the aisle there. But it was a lot of fun.
So it was in the cockpit area, it was myself, my dad, my 2 sisters, my one of my brothers, and my mom,
No,
and
nice.
and I, we're halfway through, I'm, like, having a blast. I look back, and I'm like, "Shoot the ships," I'm, like, yelling stuff at the people behind me because I'm in the front seat, and halfway through, I turn around, and I look back. My brother is, like, as very much into it as I was, he's like, he's shooting all this stuff, and I
Yeah,
look
yeah.
over, and my sister's, like, taking selfies. I'm like, "Put your hands on the controls, we haven't,"
That's
I was
incredible.
like,
I wish they took video of us in there so you could see what everyone looks like when we're playing.
yeah. It was so much fun. The massive, like, landscapes that they built for the Galaxy's Edge area
Incredible,
are
right?
just oh my gosh. I
And
would go again in a heartbeat.
there is a book though as well, about that area. So, or about the storyline in Black Spire Outpost. I think that's what it's called, or
Oh,
something like
okay.
that. So yeah, if you want to learn more about that, there is a book on there.
Nice. Yeah, it was just amazing. I mean, I
Yeah.
had never been before. You had told me how great it was, and it was like everything I had hoped to be and even better, so
Hmm.
it was a blast.
Nice.
Um,
Well, I'm
so
glad you got to see it.
thanks for entertaining, me talking about my one of my Star Wars dreams coming to fruition the past weekend. That was pretty fun, so well, moving on to the world of Star Wars, we had a little bit of news that came out, primarily which in regards to something, relating to the Lando show that has supposedly been in production for a long time. I think it's funny because we actually mentioned this in one of our most
Hmm.
recent episodes. We said that we hadn't heard anything about this, and then, like, less than a week later, this news breaks. Donald Glover, AKA Childish Gambino, and his brother. Prior to this news breaking, I'm ashamed to say I didn't even know he had a brother named Stephen Glover.
Same.
But they are both going to co-write the Lando TV show now, which is kind of exciting, especially because he plays Lando Calrissian in the show. And as
Yeah.
our resident massive Lando fan, how do you feel about this?
Oh my gosh, I was so happy. So w- we should also say that when this news had started hitting the internet and people were finding out more about it, Billy D. Williams was also tweeting about something big was going to go happen as well. And I'm like, oh my god, it's going to happen. I even posted on, if you're not following us on Hot Hangout and on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it today, I was freaking out because I thought that, are we bringing Billy D. Williams back into the Lando TV series here? I was getting really excited. But it turns out that Billy D has a book coming out, so that's not what it was at all. But either way, yeah, so I'm super excited. I'm a big fan, like you mentioned, with of Donald Glover as well as Lando Calrissian. So I've been waiting for so long for this. I'm very excited, and especially with the two brothers doing this, I think it's going to be. I mean, that this is going to be pretty special. Uh, as far as an artist, I think Childish Gambino, Donald Glover is really really good. He's I think he was writer on his show Atlanta. I don't know if you've ever
Yes,
seen that. Yeah,
I
so
have.
I mean
It's a great show.
that's a great show. So I'm very excited to where he could step into the writer's role for Lando and what he's going to bring to Star Wars. I'm just so excited.
What if
Like,
the closing scene of the Lando show is a 50-year time jump and Billy D. Williams walks on for just a cameo?
I mean, I don't want to say I would cry, but I might just.
Yeah,
I was so
that'd be
happy
pretty
when he
neat.
was in Rise of Skywalker, even when he was in the trailer. I'm like, I was so happy when I saw Billy D back in there.
Nice. Yeah, it's gonna be a good show, I think. I'm hopeful for it, and especially after his performance that we first saw in Solo. I
Hmm.
think that was when we got that first taste of, oh, yeah, I could definitely see Donald Glover as the Lando role. So
Now
it's
I
gonna
feel
be
bad
good.
putting Solo. Now I feel bad putting Solo at the bottom
Yeah,
of my movie list.
Joey's least favorite Star Wars movie, by the way. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, it's a fact. That's just what happened. I'm sorry, Donald.
No news as to when this may come out, but potentially as soon as 2024. Although that would be surprising, at least to me. But we'll see. Hopefully, we get this in the next 18 to 24 months, maybe. Ideally, we will cross our fingers and hope for the best. Perhaps even in the next 12 months. Very doubtful, but we'll see. Another. This one hit the news waves more than I remembered it. Coming into circulation the first 2 times it happened, there was or I guess it comes out on August 29th, I believe is the release date, from a certain point of view, specifically The Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view. In 2017, they released The New Hope from a certain point of view, and in 2020, they released The Empire Strikes Back certain point of view. For those who maybe aren't familiar with what this is, it's kind of like, excerpts of short stories from various different characters and people in each film, respectively. And it's kind of like retelling the events of the movie specifically through the eyes of those characters. And sometimes there's like, things they'll add here and there. I don't think it's technically canon. Correct me if I'm wrong. Uh,
I think it is actually.
is it really?
I think because I googled that too, and I think Wikipedia or somewhere said that it is actually canon.
Okay, that makes what I'm about to say perhaps more interesting. Um, Maybe I'll hold off in a second because from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi, while it hasn't fully released yet, it comes out in about 3 weeks from the time of this recording. It did release these short excerpts of each short story on Twitter, and you and I kind of browsed through the 40 of the excerpts that they released, and we each picked a favorite. Uh, in true Ben fashion, I could not decide on one, so I picked
Yeah, well,
two. But
yeah,
do you
of
want to talk
course.
about what your favorite one was first? Because
I
it kind of
mean,
also ties back into the Lando thing we were just
yeah, it
talking
definitely
about.
ties into what we know. Lando's my favorite character, so of course I'm going to pick the story about Lando. Um, yeah, so it just more Lando content for me to consume. I'm super excited for it. The Burden of Leadership by Danny Lore. It looks like that's the name for that. They will be creating another little story for Lando here. Should we just read these? Should we read through these and just so we
Sure,
have
they're
it?
super short. Yeah, why not just
Yeah,
read
yeah.
them? Yeah.
All right, so here we go. A common mistake at the sabacc table is keeping your face completely blank. The trick, you see, is an absolute what does that say? Blandness? Is that what it is? Blandness.
Yeah.
People will make extreme assumptions about what's happening underneath the nothingness. The less you're showing, the more people figure out what you're going to hide, and will figure it out. There's a galaxy full of little ways your blankness can crack under stress. No, Lando Calrissian knows the trick isn't to stay blank, it's to show exactly what you want someone to see. I mean, that couldn't be more vague. I have no idea what this story is about at all. But just the fact that it's Lando, I'm just interested in what it could be,
He's
where it takes
hustling
place.
somebody at the
He's
sabacc
hustling
table.
somebody. Yeah, yeah. Somebody's not going to be happy at the end of that transaction. So, yeah. So no surprise here. The Lando story. I will give my quick little honorable mention just because I thought it was
Yeah.
a funnier one. The Sarlacc pit one. I don't remember the
Yes,
name of it,
I was
but I
gonna say
was
the
like,
same. Yeah.
but I was like what, like you're gonna tell me a story about the Sarlacc pit? Like they have feelings, like they're this is what you're thinking about. So I thought that was a really funny one. I'll be interested in reading that one too.
But it was also the way that the Sarlacc was portrayed in the story. It was like no one ever asks how the Sarlacc pit is. They just throw the
Yeah,
Sarlacc pit food. He's like, "What about
yeah,
asking me how my
yeah,
feelings are?"
I know,
Which
yeah,
I thought
so it
was
was
kind
really
of
good.
weird, but I thought it was funny too. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. What about you?
Nice.
What's your pick?
So I had some
Or
difficult. So I
picks?
had a lot. I had a lot that I enjoyed, but two in particular that I really liked were one of them was about kind of the relationship between Obi-Wan and Luke, which I think this is the one that was controversial for some people. And then I had another one about Anakin. The first one is actually called From a Certain Point of View, and it references the famous dialogue between Obi-Wan and Luke on Dagobah when they're talking about kind of how Obi-Wan did he lie to Luke or did he not just fully tell him the truth? And so this one is called From a Certain Point of View by Alex Jennings. And it essentially just goes through the thoughts of Obi-Wan between the two lines of dialogue when he tells Luke, what I told you was true from a certain point of view. And when Luke says, I'm a certain point of view. And so basically, what happens in between those two lines of dialogue within Obi-Wan's thought process is Obi-Wan sensed the struggle within Luke's heart. Beneath a layer of calm lay a rolling sea of surging emotion, darkness and light intertwined. Luke's darkness surged against the light, but his better nature, while quieter, was the more powerful of the two for now. Of course, this was not the first time Luke had struggled so. Before, it had been attachment to his friends that threatened to pull him in the wrong direction, even after Obi-Wan warned him. I think this was interesting because I, I think it casts. First of all, it allows us an insight into potentially what Obi-Wan was thinking and when he was weighing the options of telling Luke or not. But it also
Mhm.
kind of casts Luke in a light that maybe people hadn't considered before. And whether it's right or wrong, because this was, I think, a lot of the controversial discussion about it is that Luke doesn't have this dark side. What are you talking about, Obi-Wan? But I kind of am more in agreement with this cool
Yeah.
little excerpt because it to say that someone like doesn't struggle with the light and the dark. I feel like I just don't. It doesn't feel realistic. It feels kind of like
Mhm.
fairy tale land. Like, oh, he's a good guy. He doesn't struggle with like the
Yeah.
dark side stuff at all. I mean, he is Anakin's son after all, so
Mhm.
I liked it because it was a different way of showing something we already knew, particularly the relationship between Obi-Wan and Luke and kind of what Obi-Wan was thinking when he chose to not fully tell him that Vader, of course, was his father.
Right.
So yeah, I liked this one a lot, even though it caused some discussion in the online forums. And then the other one, of course, was also related to a Skywalker, but this time Anakin rather than Luke. And this one, I believe, is from the perspective of Anakin when he's Darth Vader, if I remember correctly. And then the title of this one is called Brotherhood by Mike Chin. And it starts off with just the word Anakin. And then we go into Anakin's thought process here after he hears this voice in his head. A voice, yet this was different, clearly not a specter of the past. This didn't come with any memories or visions of things gone by. Instead, it was as if words whispered directly into his ear, as if he wasn't a phantom lost in the oceans of the Force, but whole in body and spirit as he once was, a powerful Jedi Knight, combat ready with drawn lightsaber and wide stance, staring down dozens of battle droids without a single worry. In fact, this felt just like that, but different, because this came right now. Anakin, that voice, Obi-Wan. So I don't know at what point in Return of the Jedi this takes place,
Mhm.
uh, but I'm imagining this is, like, after he's thrown the Emperor and he's, like, having Luke drag him. I feel like this is going on in his head, like,
Mm.
as Luke is dragging him. At least that's how I kinda pictured
That's
it,
cool.
so,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, because it kind of like, it is another, reinforcing of his step back towards the light. So I liked this one a lot, and maybe if I had to pick between this one and the other one, I would almost pick this one more so. I think I would just
Mhm.
like to see this, like, on film because I've already seen the other quote, occur
Right.
in a movie. But,
Right.
yeah, those are
Wanna
my 2 favorites.
wanna hear something interesting, a little bit more interesting about this one,
Yes.
is that Mike Chen actually wrote a book for Star Wars already, and the book is named Brotherhood, and it's
Ah.
about Anakin and Obi-Wan back in the Clone War era.
Oh, I know which book you're talking about. I didn't know that he was the one that wrote it. That's great. I'll have to check that
Yeah, yeah.
out.
Yeah. I'm about halfway through the audiobook, so
Okay.
it's my, mowing the lawn, audiobook. So
Nice.
I
Very
get to it
nice.
every 2 to 3 weeks.
You ever, like, jump back into where you were. You're like, "What was I reading about?"
Absolutely. I go back a chapter or two. I'm like, I don't remember where I'm at. So yeah.
So yeah, there were lots of great ones in here. Some other like honorable mentions, just real quickly. Not gonna read the stories on this one, but there was one about the mindset of a royal guard who was
Hmm.
in charge of like guarding Palpatine. There was another one that I also thought was funny about a Death Star gunner, and this
Yes.
Death Star gunner had served like in the Imperial Navy for 20 years, and he's like really excited that it's his last week of service on the Death
Oh
Star.
gosh.
I was like, that's kind of dark at the same
That's a
time, but
little
that's
bit dark.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There was another one, from the perspective of the shaman Ewok, and he's basically lamenting about the fact that the golden one, AKA C-3PO, is, like, no longer with them anymore.
Hmm.
I don't know what would have happened to him. Maybe he left Endor for a period of time or something, but and then another one, you mentioned the Sarlacc, which was funny as well. Bib Fortuna, there's a from a certain point of view excerpt where he's, like, plotting to kill Jabba the Hutt,
Yeah.
which I
I was
thought was
interested in that
interesting.
one.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanna read that one too.
Did you
So
did you read it the other two from a certain point of views or no?
no, and you know what's funny
Yeah.
is that I've always known they existed, but they've never really been on my radar the way that it is now. I feel like there's more
Hmm.
discussion around this one than when the other
I
2 came out.
agree. I don't remember. No, I could be way off on this, but I definitely don't remember them posting all of these excerpts on Twitter or somewhere where it
Right.
shows essentially all of the. I mean, it's all of the stories. So it's like a 40 tweet thread that
Yeah.
just goes through each of these. But I did enjoy. I like enjoyed even reading through there. So yeah, I think I'm gonna definitely. I actually do have the first one, and I haven't finished that one. So I have so many Star Wars books that I'm like halfway through, and I'm like, oh, I got to do this, and I got to just plow through and finish some of these.
I'd have to check out my local bookstore and, inquire into the where the first 2 if they're available.
Do you have a
And then
half
the 3rd
price
one,
books by you? Do you have
ooh,
half price books?
is that like the name of the store?
That's the name of the store. Yeah,
No, I don't think so.
I almost that's where practically exclusively I get all of my Star Wars books because
Huh,
people read them, turn them in, and then I buy them for like half the price or whatever. So
a good deal. Yeah, I don't think we do, but anyways, I'll have to and then
just
this
thought,
of course, this one comes out in 3 weeks, so I'm probably gonna pick this up too.
yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah. Well, our last piece of news before we get into the meat of this episode is that there is a fun Fortnite announcement. Would you like to tell us about what skin is gonna be
Yes.
supposedly available in the near
So
future?
again, this is a supposedly nothing's completely confirmed, but it sounds like there will be an Ahsoka Tano skin in Fortnite. Me and Ben are super excited. The first time I saw this announcement on one of the channels that I follow, I sent a screenshot to him right away. I'm like, Ben, you got to see this.
Yeah, we're
And
definitely
whatever.
not gonna spend money on that.
Yeah, right. I don't know if it's going to be in the battle pass or I don't think it's going to be a special event. Remember how the last Star Wars one was, where there's like that
Mhm.
mini battle pass for the Star Wars stuff. So I don't think it's going to be that. But either way, however, I'm going to get Ahsoka Tano on day one of the release of this particular skin. I'm going to do it. So those V-Bucks be flying through my wallet there. But yeah, we are. It's gonna be a fun one. I think. I'm gonna assume maybe. I'm thinking maybe her lightsabers will be in the game, kind of like the Darth Maul one or the
Mhm.
Obi one. So I'm wondering if there's going to be that, and so there's going to be a lot of fun. If she comes with, I thought about all this. If she comes with Maury, the owl, maybe
Oh,
that's her back
yeah.
bling, or so
Ooh,
yeah, see all these things.
that's a missed
What kind of
opportunity if they don't do that.
the emote, the crossed arms emote? I think we could do that. So I think there could be a lot of opportunity, a lot of fun with this skin. So I'm excited.
Hey, Epic, if you're watching, you gotta hire this guy for your Star Wars, emote designs and character
That's right.
designs. Yeah. So that'll hopefully be in maybe in what, less than 2 months? Is that accurate?
No, no, this is
Even
August
sooner?
25th. I think at the
Oh, I didn't
beginning of the
realize it
next
was that
season, yeah.
soon. So, like,
Yeah,
as
the
soon as
next
the show comes
season's
out.
pretty much, yeah, because the show come out the 23rd, and I think the new Fortnite season starts on that Friday, which would be the 25th.
Okay.
So and so it makes even more sense. I believe people were saying that there was some type of survey that came out recently that included Ahsoka in that survey. And they were comparing that survey to when they before this current season of Fortnite came out, that they were talking about Transformers and other other things that have come out this season. So that's kind of how they're making that assumption. But I haven't seen. I mean, it all kind of makes sense. If we are completely wrong, then that is a possibility. But either way, we're excited for hopefully to be right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if that is an image that's been provided and it doesn't actually come to fruition. I mean, that looks like
hmm
a pretty legit image, so,
That looks
uh,
like a very Fortnite type of version
yeah,
of Ahsoka.
yeah, exactly. So, we're definitely gonna be picking that up in the near future. But yeah, Ahsoka coming to Fortnite officially with officially with the release of the new show here in about 2 weeks or so, which is a perfect tie-in to the reasoning for the bulk of today's episode, us talking about the fourth season of Star Wars Rebels. Of course, the showrunners of Ahsoka, including Dave Filoni, have been quoted saying that Star Wars, or rather Ahsoka, is basically a continuation of Star Wars Rebels, is essentially Star Wars Rebels Season 5, because where we leave off with the fourth season of Rebels is where we'll very likely pick right up with the beginning of the Ahsoka show here in about 2 weeks. Maybe before we hop into any specifics, just what was your take on your rewatch of the fourth season of Rebels?
So, I mean, we've watched the what have we watched together? We watched Bad Batch, we've
Mhm.
watched Mandalorian, we watched
Andor,
Andor.
Obi-Wan?
Oh, no, we didn't have a well, I mean, we did a rewatch of Obi-Wan, right?
Right, yeah, yeah.
Um, I think this is the best season
Yeah.
of Star Wars show that I've watched,
Mhm.
ever. So, I don't remember I remember when I was watching it as it was going along, thinking, "Oh, this is pretty good," but I think now knowing everything else that's kinda going around in the Star Wars universe, and we've talked about this time and time again, the interweavings with other shows, other content. This is a great example of it, and when I was watching this, I was invested. Now, there was a little bit that I didn't understand right away because it's the 4th season. We didn't watch season 1, 2, and 3. So, I'll be clear as far as we didn't rewatch those
As
for the
part of our
as
rewatch, yeah.
part of this discussion. We decided we're gonna just cheat and just go straight to season 4 because that's what's gonna matter. Because 'Cause we're not gonna watch 1 through 4 in, like, 2 weeks, so we picked this last one. But because of that, I think although maybe I didn't get the context of some of the early stories, I was able to fill in, for the most part of where we were at in the story because we did watch it, so we had an idea. All that to say that, yeah, I think this is probably the best season of Star Wars TV series that I've ever watched, and I was almost kind of sad when it ended because I'm like, this was so good, this was such a ride, and it felt like there were no real filler episodes at all.
Yeah.
And I think it all made sense. It all had to happen. And what's crazy to me is that these were all for the most part 22-minute episodes.
Mhm.
And they weren't the 30-40 minute episodes that they were kind of used to now with these series. But, in that time, they were able to succinctly give you a story and, go all the way through the whole season without having any real fillers.
This might be a hot take, and I can totally see people disagreeing, but I think Star Wars Rebels, while I still don't know if I would say it's close for me whether I like it more than, Clone Wars or not, but I would say Star Wars Rebels is easily a more complete show, or at least
Mhm.
it feels like I can watch Rebels, and there's more continuity with the story. So, I think one of the areas where Rebels differs from Clone Wars is that with Clone Wars, sometimes you're jumping around. So you'll get, like, an episode or 2 about Ahsoka, and then you'll get, like, an episode or 2 about Rex, and then you'll get an episode or 2 about Anakin. Whereas Rebels is really, like, the story of the Ghost crew. It's like, these 6 family members is essentially the way it's marketed. It's like a family, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
journey of this family, and at no point does it really, divert from that, and there's not like you said, there's not really any filler or side episodes that it feels like, which again, it's close for me. I love Clone Wars and I love Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the 4th season of Rebels, I would say the 3rd and 4th season of Rebels are both phenomenal. Maybe my 2 favorite seasons of any Star Wars TV, perhaps along with, like, that last season of Clone Wars. Oh, I love that.
That was pretty
Um,
good.
but this was way better than I remembered it being,
Yes. Yes.
surprisingly. 'Cause I think when you open up with this season, and again, we should issue another even though we issued it at the top of the podcast episode, spoiler warning, if you have not seen Rebels, we're about to talk about details of the episodes, so that's your last chance. Um,
See you next week.
the See you next week, yeah. The season opens, and I had forgot that, yeah, we forgot that yeah, give producer Gibbo has not seen Rebels yet, and he's behind the scenes listening to all of our spoilers right now.
So he has no
But
choice.
to his credit, he has watched, what, 3 seasons of Clone Wars now, he said?
Yeah. Yeah. He's trucking through.
Nice.
He'll get here.
Yeah. Um, I think in my mind, when I was thinking about our rewatch, I was like, "Oh, we're gonna watch, like, the Darth Vader Ahsoka scene," but as soon as we started season 4, I was like, "Oh, wait, that is season 3." So this is
Mhm.
all, like, the events that follow I think it's called the Twilight of Apprentice episodes at the end of season 3 where Ahsoka and Vader face off. And so I think myself like you, I came into it and I was like, a little discombobulated, like, "Wait, where are we?" And you pick up and they're on Mandalore and they're trying to rescue
Mhm.
Sabine's dad, and I was like, "How do we get here?" Uh, that first episode, did you feel like it picked up in a way that kind of was, like, grabbing you back in, or did you feel like it took a little bit later on into the season until you felt
I
more
think
accustomed to where we were at?
I think it gave me, because I knew that that was gonna happen, that something
Mhm.
happened at the end of season 3 that I'm gonna be like, "I don't remember what happened here." But it's pretty easy to pick up. Okay, Sabine's father has been captured, we're trying to find him. Okay, so I kind of just put myself in that space. What I found myself really doing was instantly remembering why I love, like, all these characters, kind of like the sass that they are between each other. How, like, the Zeb and Ezra type of, big brother, little brother type of
Yeah.
dynamic. So, and obviously Hera and Kanan, like, kind of the mom and dad of the crew. So I think that was just a really cool way to kind of start it. I think it was fine for me, but I think
Mhm.
what even got me right into more of the Star Wars content was basically in this storyline when we go, because we're talking about Mandalorians right now. So of
Yeah.
course we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about? We're talking about dark sabers, So at the end of this particular arc, we have Sabine kind of presenting the dark saber to Bo-Katan, which was kind of the cool, to see that again. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember how cool this was. But
Yeah.
now that we've seen it in the Mandalorian, we've seen it, get past the hands through Din Djarin and oh, what was the Imperial's name again that had it?
Oh, Moff Gideon.
Giancarlo Moff Gideon, he had it for a little bit. But now, here is where Bo-Katan had it originally, and then, you know, to be happen. Oh wait, no, she had it before this too as well, right? Before,
Yeah,
did she have it like before? The whole lineage or the whole storyline of that, I believe.
so the whole thing with the dark saber, this scene is interesting to me in particular because, um, I remember so this is the scene I thought of in The Mandalorian, the end of season 2, when she refuses to take the dark saber from Mando,
Mm-hmm.
or from Din Djarin, and, uh, I immediately thought to this scene and was like, "Wait, didn't she take it from Sabine?"
Yeah, right.
And so I've always had this confusion about this, and so when I watched this scene in my rewatch of season 4, I was like, "That doesn't make sense. Why would she so willingly take it from Sabine?" But then, years later, she's not willing to take it from Din Djarin. Like, there like there's all these, like, rules that come with the dark saber supposedly
Yeah,
within
right.
Mandalorian culture, like, you have to win it from someone in combat, otherwise it's not actually yours and you don't deserve it. And so, what I came upon, or what I stumbled upon when I was kind of reading and researching, particularly about Bo-Katan and the dark saber, is that the reason she doesn't take it from Din Djarin in the, 2nd season of Mandalorian is that it's a learning experience from this moment, because
Yeah, that
she
makes sense.
inevitably loses it, to Moff Gideon at some point. And so, her taking it in what she then, uh, like, retrospectively might deem, like, that she wasn't willing or that she wasn't worthy of the
Worthy to
dark
get it,
saber, I
yeah.
should say, is kind of the reasoning why she won't take it from Din Djarin, because she feels like in order to wield it as a rightful ruler, you have to obtain it worthily.
Yeah.
And so,
Right, right.
that to me gave me, like, m sense and comfort for why she would take it here so willingly and then not take it from Din later on. Sorry, that was kind of a big
Right.
side tangent, but essentially, uh, yeah, she receives the saber from Sabine, and it's just cool. It's always cool to see the dark saber in action in
Mhm.
any Star Wars content. And then, of course, that leads up to this rebel mission. Eventually, I believe it's in the following episode, though, to tap into the Imperial communication disk. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think about? What are your thoughts on this part of the season in particular? Did you feel like
I
it was
think
stronger than the beginning, or not?
I think this felt very much Rebels. If you
Mhm.
remember, like through the first, through all of the Rebels seasons, I mean, they are kind of doing these side missions like the entire time. They're picking,
Mhm.
they're picking up weapons from a place. They are, getting credits. I mean, that's kind of what they do. That's kind of what the Ghost Crew, the Phoenix Crew does, is these types of things. So, they wanted to tap into the Imperial communication dish, so they can get that information kind of, and always be a step ahead of the Empire. But like they always do, they someone always comes in and, maybe not quite on their side, but then we get a big reveal, that a certain person comes into play here.
I know
Mr.
you love
Sagar
this person. Yeah.
Yeah, Saw Gerrera once again. Saw is here, and he does not take no for an answer. He will always be around and is a little more ruthless in the way he does things. So, and I always like seeing him because it really, you can compare and contrast how different the ways that you can accomplish the same thing. I mean, obviously they're both against the Empire, but Saul's a little bit more brute force about it. He wants to get
Yeah.
in, blow some people up, blow some dishes up, whereas the rebellion, really wants to be a little bit more stealth about things, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I just to see Saw in that light again, I'm like, yeah, that's Saw again. Let's go, So, but what did you think about seeing our friendly neighborhood Saw Gerrera here?
Well, the cool thing about Saw and Rebels is that his likeness this is after Rogue One came out, and so, his likeness resembles Forrest Whitaker, which is really cool to see, like, on
Yes,
the small screen on TV. You're like, "Oh, wow, that actually looks like him a lot."
yes, yes.
But yeah, it is his approach, and this has always been Saw's approach in the Clone Wars and Rebels, is, not one of a democratic understanding of policies or politics, or like you said, he does not operate the same way that the Rebel Alliance does. In fact, to say that Saw is an ally with the rebels sometimes is even a bit of a stretch. he
Hmm.
he has methods which are brutal, usually resort to steps that he takes, kind of just he's willing to do anything for what he claims is the greater good. More of, I guess you could categorize him as like an anarchist, but with,
Hmm.
like, the best intentions, I guess.
Right, right,
Even
right.
if
Yeah.
even if that means, like, getting rid of everyone who gets in his
Hmm.
way. So, he's always a fun character to bring on, and he does provide kind of that, yin to the yang of the rest of the Rebel Alliance, especially the Ghost Crew. So
Right.
always love seeing Saw. It was great to see him back for the fourth season of Rebels. And then I think it's in the next episode where um, there was the Kyber crystal that was destroyed that was supposed to be used for the Death Star. Does that
Right.
sound about
It sounds
right?
around that time. Yeah, I think Saw ends up actually he wants to destroy it, so
Right.
he ends up like putting a lightsaber into it, which I've
Yes,
never
yes, yes.
seen. Because it was a huge. I mean, if you imagine something to help power the Death Stars, you're gonna have some pretty huge kyber crystals. So this was a huge one, probably the size of Ezra, to be honest. And he pretty much puts the lightsaber
Oop,
into it. Yeah,
sorry,
so
I thought I
it
lost you
definitely.
there for a second.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, you're good. Yeah, so it was a sight to see, them not knowing what was in front of them, I guess, because obviously we know, what we're looking at here. For them to have no idea, like, oh, we just know they're weaponizing it, and we have no idea. So to be able to have that insight as as a viewer, like they're kind of giving us like, okay, we know you know what this is, so check this out and see how you feel about it.
Yeah, and this is kind of the moment that Saw and Ezra, kinda go their separate ways too. Like, where
Hmm.
they're, like, fully accepting of, "We're not gonna go about this the same way, let's not get in each other's way," and Saw just kind of bids him farewell. Kinda wishes
Right.
him good luck at the same time, but, that they're not really
Yeah.
gonna approach things in the same manner, so,
That's
I
what Saw does. He just comes in, swoops in, slices some
yeah,
stuff up, and he's gone.
yes, exactly. I think at this point in the season, you're, like, approaching maybe this is about a third of the way through the season, I wanna say. And, at least for me at this point in the season, I was like, I feel like I remember Ahsoka being in the show at this point. And so the
Mm,
entire time I'm watching the beginning of the 4th season of Rebels, up until this point, Ahsoka has not appeared. I'm like, "Where's Ahsoka?" Like, I don't remember her not being in the show for this long. And then it all we'll talk about that here in a second, but it all kind of, like, comes back to that at the end, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, yes, I remember now."
mhm.
So that at this point in the show was also on my mind after Saw, hops out. I'm like, "It's weird we haven't seen Ahsoka yet." So,
Yeah.
just taking you through the thought process of what I was thinking as I watched
Right.
this episode. Another thing that's showcased for the first time in this season is the TIE Defender, this new almost class of, aircraft that they're having to steal the plans for, or at one point, I think they
I
were.
think it was the flight recorder. I think they were trying
Yes.
to steal something else. I don't remember what it was, but they ended up going for the flight recorder,
Yeah, well,
to have more information about it,
part of it
about the.
they stored in the desert, the Lothal desert,
Mhm.
and I don't think they ended up actually getting that piece, but they got the other piece. Anyways,
Right.
this is like a key storyline of, like, kinda the middle of the season, um, which inevitably leads when they discover this TIE Defender, they wanna, uh, you know, understand the inner workings of it, and so they attempt an attack on this facility in order to obtain this, flight recorder, but of course, in the process for that, our beloved, Hera is captured,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Mhm.
So,
And
this
kind of brutal what they ended up doing to her. I mean,
yeah.
they were, like, shocking her, and I think they ended up doing the probe droid on, or is that the probe droid? Is that what it was? The one with all the
Yeah,
needles? I always forget that's
yeah,
the one,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
If
To
if you're
kinda
watching
to
the
see that
video version, here's a picture of Rook.
Rook. This is
One of my
Rook, the
favorites.
is he a bounty hunter? Is that what we're calling him? Kind of the bounty hunter of the Empire here for this?
I think his technical title would be assassin. He's like
Mm, okay.
Thrawn's personal assassin, which, by
Oh,
the way,
gotcha,
we
okay.
haven't even talked about Thrawn yet. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thrawn, yeah, Thrawn comes up in here. Uh, Thrawn's so cool. I mean, like, if out of all the people in the Empire, all the officers, the Emperor himself, Thrawn is kind of just cool because
Yeah.
he walks in, right? He walks in and he just like first of all, he's a big art fan apparently, so he just collects all this art, but not just as a collection, but to understand the culture, understand the people based off of the art that they possess. So he's procured all this stuff, and that's kind of like his thing. But in the meantime, he is this really cool all blue character. Apparently, you've been reading about him, so maybe you could
I
talk more about
have.
that.
So I'm only 5 chapters into the newest Thrawn novel by Timothy Zahn. Um, but it is so fascinating to read about a character's backstory who you've already sort of got to know through other various Star Wars media and content.
Hmm.
Um, but it gives you a good insight as to how he is so quick on his feet and resourceful and just
Yes.
frankly intelligent. Um, there's this isn't really spoiled too much from the book, and I won't say like what the conversation is about. But pretty early on in the book, he has like a face-to-face meeting with Palpatine,
Hmm.
and it's just cool to see him like go about that conversation with the Emperor and almost this bargaining process for like telling the Emperor, not like begging him to like keep him alive, but basically like telling the Emperor, "This is why you need me." And that's
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
like his thought process is like, I can like, you need me more than I need you sort of thing like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
So
Maybe
he
we can
he's
get
a
some interviewing skills from, if you're looking at like job interviews, we need to learn from
yeah,
Thrawn. Sounds like.
yeah, exactly. So it's just cool to kind of, at least within the book and just his character as a whole, um, to kind of see the way his mind works, especially
Mhm.
in the sticky situations. He's quick on his
Yes.
feet. Um, so as part of this attempt to attack the Imperial facility to obtain the flight recorder for the TIE Defender, on this is all taking place on Lothal, by the way. We should mention this is really the main setting for the fourth season of Rebels.
Mhm.
Mandalore early on in the season, but for the most part, the majority of the season takes place on Lothal. This is Ezra Bridger, the main character's homeworld, and it also provides a lot of knowledge and importance as to the essence of what the Force is. It's
Mhm.
a very Force-rich planet, I guess we could
Yeah.
say. And I think we'll talk about that more probably here in our next few points. But what I really wanted to get at, after Hera's capture, this leads to one of the frankly most surprising things that I've probably witnessed in Star Wars. Perhaps this would be right up there with Luke, I am your father. Because I really didn't see this coming the very first time I watched this years ago, and then even on the rewatch, it gets you pretty hard. This
Mhm.
was this was your favorite episode, by the way. This is the 10th episode of the fourth
Mhm.
season, called Jedi Knight, spelled with an N rather than a K. But
Mhm.
did you want to talk about this moment
Yeah.
we're referencing?
Well, the we leave off with Hera being captured by the Empire, and uh and of course they're going to go after her. The Phoenix Crew is trying to go get her. They do succeed. Kanan is actually there to save her. At this point, I believe she's kind of out of it because she had been kind of hit with the truth serum, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So there's a big, it's kind of comical here, and this is the crazy thing, is that it's kind of comical and it's funny. She's kind of fallen on her feet, and basically, I think at this point she finally confesses her true feelings for Kanan, in that she loves him, um and I forget if I think they share a kiss there as well. But either way, so that's what ends up happening. But as part of the escape plan, they are on these huge fuel pods, essentially, that
Mhm.
are fueling the production of these TIE defenders. And they're not very safe. They're big big gas fuel pods. So in the midst of their escape, they're jumping onto I think they're on the Ghost.
Mhm.
They're trying to jump on the Ghost, but then Governor Price tells her soldiers to fire on them, even though there's the fuel pods and all this. It ends up exploding. Sure enough, there's a chain reaction, and we see Kanan still on top of the fuel pod, while Hera and everyone else is kind of safely on the ships. Oh my god, this is this photo here is always gets me. But he decides to kind of sacrifice himself for the better of the crew, and he dies. He dies right there on the spot. And I mean, like I said, it was so minutes ago, it was a comical type of thing. It was really funny. And then all of a sudden this happens. And I
Yeah.
think that you actually can kind of see it in this shot here. In a previous season, he actually goes blind because
Mhm.
of I forget exactly what happened, if it was a battle injury or exactly what it was.
I'm pretty sure it was Darth Maul. In the
Was it
Twilight of the
okay?
Apprentice episode, he kind of just
Okay.
slashes him across the face with his lightsaber.
Okay. So he has lost his vision, but at the very, very last second, they make point to and up until this point, you would be able to see his eyes, but they're kind of cloudy. At this very last second, before he is engulfed by flames, the cloud kind of goes away from his eyes. So I like to think that he was able to finally see for those last seconds to see
Yeah.
Hera and the crew be safe before he perishes. So that was the wow. That was a tough scene to watch. I remember watching it because it's really quick. So it all happens and then it kind of fades to a white, which is kind of different. You don't really
Mhm.
see that, So it all fades to white and it says Rebels, and that's kind of like the closing card for it. And I remember watching it the first time. I'm like, What happened?" Like I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. You're like,
And
"He's
and, and
not
especially
actually gone, right?"
right, exactly. But yeah, you don't survive one of those. It felt it it was very surprising, but I think also very necessary for all that. What were your thoughts on Kanan's passing in this episode?
Yeah. I mean, this was I had a lot of episodes I liked. This was one of the 3 that I noted as being probably my favorites. I think the second half of season 4 of Rebels is arguably the best, like, set of episodes of any Star Wars show. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
it
easily.
is, like, banger after banger after banger of episodes.
Yeah.
Um, this in particular, like, it just really, drives home how connected you feel to the characters, especially when you unexpectedly lose one of them, one of the utmost main characters of the show. You're
And
like,
the Jedi.
"Wow." And a Jedi, yeah. And I mean, that's kind of the, it feels like there's almost not as much of a emphasis made in the show about the fact that, like, this is basically supposedly one of the last Jedi in existence at this point in time.
Mhm.
I think there's a scene with the Emperor where he references the Jedi Kanan Jarrus has blah blah blah. So, but I was like, this is a big deal, I mean, and then of course, anytime you see a character go in a way that is sacrificial like this, it just kind of makes it even more emotional. He is saving them, and then it all kind of comes back around to this moment in time as well in about 3 episodes from now, which we'll get to in a second. But um, yeah, I was equally as astounded with this episode when I watched it on the rewatch
I
as I
mean,
was when I first
this
saw it.
is this is a season finale episode.
Oh yeah,
That's how it
yeah,
felt. This was episode what, 10?
yes,
This is a
yeah,
season finale episode. So to even have this here, kind of just in the season, it's shocking because you're just like, what else can what else is gonna even happen? What can you do? So yeah, it really did get you ready for the rest of the season though.
yeah. Well, and it kind of leaves you thinking, what are they like? How are they going to do the rest of the season? Like with Kanan not being around, and so
Yeah.
the next kind of thing that you have to deal with as a viewer, but also as you're watching the Ghost, especially Ezra and Hera, really all of them, but particularly those two, his apprentice and his love, is that they're dealing with this loss of, how do we go on? How do we continue to not only fight for this cause without Kanan, but just kind of exist without this person who is so important to us?
Mhm.
And so uh, maybe that's something. I mean, it's a show with short episodes
Yeah.
where it's kind of hard to convey the extensiveness in terms of the amount of time that would probably take to get over something like that. But
Right.
uh,
But,
you know,
the fact that they spent an episode kind of doing that,
right?
I
Yeah,
mean I mean,
they didn't
they
just brush it
could've
over.
they didn't brush it over, the one of the things about the first Death Star taking down Alderaan, I mean, that was Leia's entire planet, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And, you know,
he's like,
that's
no,
unfortunate. Oh,
that's
no! That's all of them. But, I
everybody.
understand. Maybe back then they didn't understand all that, but still, I mean, this was kind of a whole episode where they were trying to grieve and trying to figure out how they were gonna continue to move on,
Yeah,
uh, to, uh like you said, how to move on with their missions as well as just having this void in their life that their master, their teacher, their friend, their love are gone now.
and the others on the flip side of this, the other side consequence of the fuel depot exploding is that Governor Price gets in deep doo doo with Grand Admiral Thrawn because she may have uh, gotten rid of Kanan, but at the same time, the production of the TIE Defenders is completely shut down because there's no more fuel because she blew it up
Right.
in an
Exactly.
effort to try to get rid of him. So I think in her mind, she's like, he'll reward me because I got rid of the Jedi. Then he's like very upset with her because the production of the TIE Defenders is not going to happen now because
Right,
blew the
yeah.
fuel up.
'Cause, and this is the only time we've ever seen the TIE Defender elites, right? I don't think they
As
I mean,
far as I know.
this is why we never see it, and I
Mhm.
think it's pretty cool to have something like that in the show. I
Yeah.
feel, and, I mean, because the Empire was ready to create these, and they never happened because of Kanan.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as I know, I mean, I could be wrong. Let us know down in the comments if there is another, appearance of these anywhere else in the Star Wars universe, but, also, as a quick side note, we always attempt to get each episode under an hour, and this one's definitely going over, so thanks for sticking with us through this episode here today. We only got, what, like, kind of 3 or 4 more episodes to really talk about and cover, and for me, these were some of the best ones.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Part of Ezra's grieving process is kind of becoming more attuned with the Force, particularly as it relates to way the Force interacts with the wildlife on Lothal. There are these loath wolves, is what they're called, and then there's actually a little loath cat on top of the loath wolf. But before Kanan passes away, or tragically, is killed in this incident, um, there is a scene where he's kind of telling Ezra how these loathed wolves are deeply connected, not only to the planet of Lothal, but to the Force. Kind of going back to how Lothal is a very like Force-rich planet, and so there is an element of like how does that work with some of the things the loathed wolves do, and it's not entirely explained, but I think that's the point.
Yeah.
I think there is supposed to be some mystery when it comes to how the Loathed Wolves operate as this extension of the Force. Um,
Doom.
Doom, yeah. Which is Kanan Jarrus's given birth name is Caleb Doom. Very side note, we have a friend I have a friend in real life whose name is Caleb Doom.
Wait, what? Really?
Yeah, and so, like, when he watched this show, he was like, "No way."
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's Doom is spelled differently, but yeah,
But it's fine,
same
yeah.
same name, yeah.
You could change it.
Yeah. But speaking of Doom, that's what the Loath Wolf keeps saying to Ezra, and so this is, like, part of Ezra's not only grieving process, but kind of, like, understanding what the next step
Mhm.
is and how to move on from Canaan's sacrifice, and not only move on, but kind of use that sacrifice to keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
And so through the process of kind of being with these Loathe Wolves, they at one point, the Loathe Wolves, he and the remaining crew of the Ghost escape, um, and they come upon this area which is supposedly well, it is where the Jedi temple that they go to search for is, but they also find that the Empire is kind of inhabiting that area, and there's a I forget what his title is. There's this creepy old, like,
Oh, right. Yes, yes, yes.
almost like a mage. That's not what they call him in the show, but he's very into, like lore and magic and like the arts, and he's wanting
Mhm.
to research and study this Jedi temple. But they're kind of at a stopping point because they can't figure out how to open the temple. And they've uncovered this image, which for those who have seen the Clone Wars, this is where this image really originates. It's referred to as, I think it's the Mortis gods, and it's the father, the son, and the daughter, and this kind of this story of the three. Not to give too much backstory, because there's a whole episode or two of Clone Wars that explains it pretty
Mhm.
well, but it's kind of the essence of light and dark and why that
Mhm.
exists, why the Force exists almost as like this binary of lightness and dark. Um, the son representing the dark and the daughter representing the light, and the father almost like trying to keep the balance between the two, sort of thing. So if you're watching the video version of the podcast, that's what that image is that you're seeing there. And so this mage guy on Lothal, who's at the location of the Jedi Temple, along with all these other stormtroopers, is the process of trying to open it. And so basically, Ezra and Sabine kind of go undercover, and they're trying to
Mhm.
figure out how to get into the temple before the Imperials figure out how to
Yep.
open the temple gate. Is essentially where episode 13 leads us, which is a world between worlds. And now this is kind of, now we're really getting into why we wanted to watch season 4 of Rebels before Ahsoka comes out,
Yep.
because this is one of the largest connecting points for what we're going to see in Ahsoka. So if you don't watch Rebels prior to seeing Ahsoka, which is fine, it's not something that you have to do in order to understand Ahsoka, but it will make understanding Ahsoka much easier, because um, within the world of Star Wars, within this episode of Rebels, we learn that within this Jedi temple, Ezra discovers what is referred to as the world between worlds. And kind of to tie this back to what we were talking about earlier with the end of season 3, Joey, cut me off if I'm rambling too long. But at the end of season 3, we see Ahsoka and Vader fighting as Ezra is unable to help and is like closed off by a wall at this other temple at a different location. And so essentially what the world between worlds is it's almost like this place that it inhabits an area outside of time. And as a process, the way it's depicted in the show, there's like these portals where you can almost reach across time. And so Ezra comes across one of these portals and sees Ahsoka fighting Vader, which we got to witness at the end of season 3. So it's almost like we are looking back in time at what happened at the end of the previous season of Rebels. Sorry, this is getting a little confusing if you haven't seen the show. But um, Ezra, long story short, reaches into the portal to save Ahsoka as she's about to be struck down by Vader, and then the portal shatters in after she is pulled through. And so it's kind of this moment where you're like, "What is happening right now?" I
Yep.
remember watching this for the first time, and it's almost the introduction of what feels kind of like a time travel element, but it's not really time travel. It's kind of just this space that is representative of the cosmic force that operates outside of time, can like see to different moments in time. And so essentially this is why the empire this wants the power over this temple, is because it will give them the power to harness like time and space, and to be, travel between these places and whatnot. So anything you wanted to add in there? I know that was a lot, especially if you haven't seen the show.
Right.
Anyone that's
No,
listening.
I think I think you nailed it. I mean, the Empire wants it because of its power. I think somebody even mentions that whoever has this power will rule everything essentially because you have access to all these different, you know, access to time itself.
Mhm.
And there is a part here where Ezra fights his own he is able to get to the portal that to the moment where Kanan dies and almost jumps in and tries to save him, but Ahsoka stops him. So I think that, that's kind of shows, Ahsoka's wisdom in all of this, even though she just kind of just got pulled into this as well. Something that neither of them really knew about, obviously. So Yeah. So I mean, I think you said it perfectly there, and
Mm.
yeah, it kind of just moves on from that. The emperor tries to trick not Kanan, Ezra into uh tries to trick Ezra into opening it later on, I believe, as well,
Mhm.
because eventually he leaves, he ends up getting out of there. Um
It's
but
interesting
yeah.
the Emperor almost uses, like, 2 approaches. Like, when he initially comes into contact with Ezra and Ahsoka, he's like, big bad Emperor that we know, like,
Mhm.
he's, like, using this, Force lightning on them. He's attempting to,
Mhm.
he's the Emperor we know.
Yeah.
And then later on, as you were describing, we see a hologram of an emperor who is not this, like, old, cloaked, wrinkly guy,
Yeah,
but
it's
he's
Palpatine.
res it's yeah, it's resembling, like, almost Phantom Menace Sheev Palpatine, where it's like,
Mhm.
he looks like a senator, and he's very
Right,
political
yeah.
looking. He's talking with a
Yeah.
demeanor that seems rational and encouraging,
Right. And he
but
uses and he
ultimately
uses he uses Ezra's parents as kind of bait
yeah,
in order
yeah.
to try to open up the Jedi Temple, which I thought was low blow. I mean, that's just mean there, Sheev, to try to use, the parents that he hasn't been seen in a very long time, and yeah, but that's very much the Emperor there.
Yeah. But credit to Ezra, there's a lot of growth within his character, especially from
Yes.
last season when he was like basically Darth Maul's apprentice at one point. Like he
Mhm.
like has the wherewithal to understand that this is like the Emperor trying to deceive him. So in a really heart-touching moment, he's like, "Mom, Dad, I love you," and then he destroys the
Yeah.
temple, and so
Right, yeah.
um, yeah, it's just the whole concept of the world between worlds when it was introduced. It's just like whoa. And so the reason this is important for Ahsoka is because there's actually a scene in the trailer of Ahsoka where there is
Mhm.
something portal-esque resembling one of the
Yes.
portals from the world between worlds. And so almost certainly going to be seeing some sort of reference to this world between worlds. And this is going to be like a key element of this fight, of this ongoing this effort in order to find Ezra. I guess not to jump ahead too much, but that's likely where Ahsoka will open up here in about 2 weeks. So having said all that, in the meantime, the, rebels trick the governor, Governor Price, the same one that blew up the fuel pods earlier, to attack them so that they can ultimately capture her, and then in the process of this, we also get to see a lot of the end of this show is fun because it brings back a lot of the supporting cast of the show
Mhm.
to the aid and the effort of the crew of the Ghost.
Like
And
who?
so we see a few, including like Vizago and Ryder, but mainly you get to
Yep.
see Hondo Anaka, who is all the way back from the Clone Wars, and actually was part of the Rise of the Resistance
Yes.
ride at Galaxy's Edge, which I thought was really cool too. But Hondo Anaka, the pirate, comes back and assists. He says, "I'm willing to do anything for that boy,"
Yeah, that's
which I
right.
thought was a cool addition of a line there. Um, and then they use Governor Price to command the Imperials to retreat back to the dome and otherwise known as the space station. Ezra, in the process, also gets captured by Grand Admiral Thrawn, and this is the point in the show where if you haven't seen a previous season of Rebels, you're probably like, "What are those giant space whale things that keep
Yep.
popping up?" What did you think about this scene between Ezra and Grand Admiral Thrawn? This is one of the few moments in the entire show where Thrawn doesn't feel quite as strong as he always seems like he is.
Right, yeah. I agree.
Did you
I think this was great because the entire series was leading up to this moment, right?
Mhm.
The Thrawn versus Ezra, essentially. This is where it all ends up. And I I forgot how fun it was to watch this part, honestly, because it was kind of like he ends up capturing him, but we've come to find out Ezra wanted to be captured, so he has this plan in place where he has to go up to I forget the name of Thrawn's ship, but he ends up going up to Thrawn's ship and gets kind of turns himself in and gets captured, and then he what he does from up there, he is already commandeered, I don't know what the right word is, for these space whales to come in and essentially annihilate the fleet there while he's there. But just like Kanan did just, a couple episodes before, uh Ezra is very prepared to kind of be another sacrifice for the greater good. Um as they are kind of fighting through that, the space whale kind of comes in and knocks down Thrawn's ship, and starting wrapping him up like a snake, which I completely forgot about, may I add, like that.
Yeah.
That is basically wrapping him around. But then and then here's another part I kind of forgot. I forgot how all of this even transpired. So it was kind of fun watching it all over again. But when these space whales essentially start glowing, it means they're about to go into hyperspace.
Yes.
And and they're all glowing, and even Harris says, "You got to get out of there. You got to get out of there." Sabine says something as well, but Ezra just like, "No, I got this. This is something I got to do."
Well, and the
And
Purgils, the space whales, known as the Purgils, like Ezra doesn't even tell any of the other
yes,
members of
right,
the Ghost or the crew that this was part of his plan. So, like,
right,
as they're watching it, they're telling him to get out because they didn't even know this was gonna be, like, part of Ezra's plan.
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah. So ends up, he kind of he says his goodbye. He does the "May the Force be with you always." Oh my god,
That
I like
that
almost
hit me.
that. Okay, good, because I think I actually cried because I'm like, oh my god. Then they all take off, and then he's gone. So
Yeah.
just to kind of see that sacrifice and what he needed to do. But then shortly after that, a hologram pops up of Ezra on the ghost ship, and he kind of, he does his little goodbye to everybody. It was one of those, if you've seen this, things have gone the way I wanted to, or a specific way. I think Chopper is the one that actually gives us a message to them. Zeb, you could have the top bunk. uh, Hera, I brought the fruit that you like, and then he says something to Sabine. Sabine, I'm counting on you.
Yeah.
And just that the connection between Ezra and Sabine, I've always loved so much. Because it's very much like, you know, brother sister. It's very much like, they are fighting for the same things, but they're kind of the same age, it feels like, but they're always like at ends with each other. But you could even see that that meant so much to Sabine. He's like, what is he talking about? What are you counting on me for? So she's taking it to heart. So to kind of see that all end up like that, and then at the end of it, they end up, uh because all of the ships are gone. Now they're able to blow up the death not the Death Star. They are able to blow up the space station, the dome that contains all of the Empire. So they have to escape that first, and then they go. So and they end up blowing that up. So that's kind of the conclusion of this battle. And I couldn't. It was just so good. All this entire last half of the season was incredible.
I guarantee you that hologram of Ezra saying to Sabine, "I'm counting on you." Guarantee we're gonna see that in the first 5 minutes
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
Ahsoka
We
show.
better. We better. We
Like, that's
better.
probably what it's gonna open to Sabine, and she's gonna be, like, just replaying this hologram of Ezra
Hmm.
from years ago at this point in time when
Right.
we'll
Yeah.
probably see Sabine in the show, so, um, there is also a little epilogue that comes with the show, which will tie directly into the time
Hmm.
period that we'll see in Ahsoka, because it's being narrated by Sabine, and she's talking about how, she's talking about the fall of the Empire. So the show takes place prior to Episode 4, but this epilogue takes place after Episode 6.
Hmm.
Kind of
Hmm.
now into the time of like when Mandalorian takes place and whatnot. So, um, before I get to the Sabine stuff, as part of the epilogue, Zeb brings Agent Callus. Who Agent Callus is one of the formerly an Imperial, but kind of betrays the Empire and goes with the crew of the Ghost. And so, prior to his betraying the Empire, he was very just. There's a whole episode of the show where he's like trying to essentially exterminate the
Mhm.
Lasat species, which is the species that Zeb is. And so as part of the epilogue, Zeb, like, shows him that, "Look, there's these Lasat that walk onto this, ship,
Mhm.
and there's, like, all these Lasat surrounding Agent Callus," and he's like, "Oh, wow," you know? So it's like a cool callback to a previous season's
I
episode.
I didn't kill you all, thank goodness, you know?
Yeah. Ooh, there's some relief there. Um, and then, of course, we see Hera has a son now, named Jason Syndulla, which is, a lot of, at least I would assume, the inspiration for his name. For those that don't know, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, there's a picture of Jason Syndulla there as well, but, um, his name, I would assume, is originated from the original name of what in Star Wars Legends, what Han and Leia's, son became, which was Jason, Solo. Actually, he turned to the dark side, so
Oh.
hopefully Jason
Oh
Syndulla
boy,
doesn't do
Jason.
that.
Uh-oh, that's bad foreshadowing.
Yeah. So we get to see, Kanan and Kanan and Hera had this little one, and then, of course, after Kanan's death, Hera gave birth to Jason Syndulla, so it's cool to kinda see Kanan living on, in his son that way. And then the very last scene of the epilogue, which is, of course, going to tie directly into Ahsoka, is what we were talking about earlier with, Sabine going off to find Ezra. Ezra says, "I'm counting on you." He gives these very, like, practical, almost comical things to Zeb and Hera,
Yeah,
and then to Sabine, it's this generic, vague, "I'm counting on you," and she's like, "What
yeah.
does that mean?"
Jedi, I
Uh,
tell you, Jedi never tell you
yeah.
exactly what they want you to know.
Right, and so we see Sabine approaching an older Ahsoka at the end of the epilogue, seemingly about to go off and try to look for Ezra, which leads us directly into the,
Yes.
uh, Ahsoka show, and so, um, having said all that, this was this was essentially not only like a recap and summary of the show, but kind of, an emphasis on some of our favorite parts of the season, and kind of just like a promo for why we think you should watch Rebels maybe before you,
Yeah.
look into Ahsoka as
In
a
the
show.
in the time that you've watched this entire episode of the Hot Hangout, you could have watched 4 episodes of Rebels
That's
at
true.
this
What are
point.
you doing with your life? Um, so having said all of that, the final question I think we wanted to
Yeah.
pose as we approach the hour 20-minute mark of this podcast is, what rewatching this season will
Mhm.
do for the Ahsoka series, specifically for
Mhm.
you or for me or just for the general audience.
I mean, it really gives us a great idea of what we're getting into. I mean, Rosario Dawson had specifically, explicitly said that this is Rebel season 5. That's what Ahsoka season 1 is gonna be about. So, going into it, if you didn't have this information, I guess we'll find out if you didn't watch Rebel season 4, if you're able to kinda keep up. I mean, that's a possibility that it won't be as enjoyable, but the fact that, we were able to kinda go back and see all this again, kinda remember why you felt so strongly about Sabine, about Hera, about, the Rebel crew. To have that going into this season, that's to season 1 of Ahsoka, I think that's what I got out of this for sure.
Yeah, I as a someone who loves the character of Ahsoka, I want the experience of the person who watches the new show that comes out in 2 weeks, the new Ahsoka show. I want them to, like, fully embrace the character
Mhm.
of
Of course.
Ahsoka. I feel like you can do that without seeing Clone Wars and Rebels, but to, like, fully embrace the character of Ahsoka, I just feel like you have to, like, know just certain things
You have to
about her
know
character.
more than what Mandalorian had shown,
Oh,
right? That's
absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
In
yeah.
fact,
To under
there's a great graphic I saw somewhere. Maybe we can find it and we'll try to repost it on the Hoth Hangout Twitter and the Hangout Instagram. It's a graphic of, like, the too long didn't watch, too long didn't read, whatever it's called,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or it's like essentially, it's like a list of 12 episodes, and there's, like,
Mm,
3 from Clone Wars,
Yes,
a
I've
couple
seen that.
from
Yeah.
Rebels, and it's like all these essential episodes that you really need to watch in order to
Mhm.
fully understand what's going to be going on in the Ahsoka show. So,
Yeah.
um, that's something we'll maybe we can post a link to it in the show notes, or we'll post it on the Hoth Hangout Twitter or something like that. But
Yes.
at the
Yes.
very least, I would say if you haven't seen Clone Wars or Rebels, and you don't think you can watch both shows in 2 weeks, which that's a very difficult task, I might add. Um, Maybe just like find that graphic and watch like a few episodes of each of the
Mhm.
show, the ones that are specifically about Ahsoka's character, because
Yes.
um, I would say they're very worth watching.
Absolutely.
Well, this we are officially less than 2 weeks till the release of Ahsoka. I'm getting more and more excited, by the very hour. On next week's episode of the Hot Hangout podcast, what else
Shockingly.
would we be talking about? Yeah, other than our oh, look at this. Whoa! Shout out to producer Gibbo for finding this
Yeah.
graphic just on the spot like that.
Yes,
For
this
those
is
of you
it. Yeah.
watching the video version of the podcast, so it's 2 episodes of Tales of the Jedi, 5 episodes of Clone Wars, or maybe slightly more than 5 episodes of Clone Wars. Another episode of Tales of the Jedi. Anyways, there's like what 12, 15 episodes total there that kind of give a good understanding and synopsis of the character of Ahsoka. That
Yes.
I would highly encourage people to watch those prior to the show. But yeah, again, next week we're going to be giving our final sort of thoughts and ideas and maybe propositions for what we want to see from the series. Maybe something we've seen in the trailer. Maybe something we've seen from different various shows that we'd like to see incorporated into this new show as well. Perhaps things we've seen from novels that we want to see
Hmm.
incorporated into the characters of Ahsoka and Thrawn or whoever the case may be. Speaking of which, I know I kind of showed this a little bit earlier, but I'm gonna attempt to finish this prior to next week. Not
Nice.
only is Ahsoka a great character, but Thrawn is also a great character. So we'll be talking all things Ahsoka, all things Thrawn next week, kind of in the anticipation for what would be the best Star Wars show we've seen in a while. So um
Absolutely.
any last thoughts on Ahsoka or Star Wars Rebels season 4 or just anything in general about all the excitement in the world of Star Wars nowadays?
There's so much excitement. We got news about Lando series. We've got Ahsoka coming up. There's just so much Acolyte. Eventually, Star Wars gaming. Oh my gosh, great time. We say it every episode, but it's hard not to say it every episode. This is an incredible time to be a fan.
Yeah. Gosh, we're so lucky to be like Star Wars fans now. I just
Yeah.
I man, it's great. New stuff all the time, especially Ahsoka. Well, we again greatly appreciate you listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast. As always, remember you can check us out on Spotify and Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. Additionally, check out the video version of the podcast over on YouTube and subscribe to us there. We appreciate you all for listening and for getting us to 150 subscribers over there as well. Shout out to each and every single one of the YouTube subs. Whoop whoop. Additionally, we're on the socials at Hoth Hangout on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter/X, whatever Elon Musk is deciding to call that website nowadays. Any last thoughts, Joey, before we call this one?
I miss Kanan. I miss you, buddy. Thank you for all you've done.
What a great character. Yeah.
What a great character.
Well, we thoroughly enjoyed our rewatch and recap of the 4 seasons of Rebels. We're excited for Ahsoka, which comes out in 2 weeks. We're going to be doing our last podcast before the release of Ahsoka next week, talking all things Ahsoka. So be on the lookout for that one. Hope you'll be able to catch it. Thanks again for listening to this one. We love and appreciate y'all so very much, and may the Force be with you.